February 14, 2024, at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, Illinois. What was supposed to be a routine flight, just another metal bird whisking its passengers through the skies, turned into an unexpected drama on this fateful Valentine's Day. Flight 872, bound for Denver, became the stage for an unplanned spectacle of epic proportions. At the center of it all was Erica, an unsuspecting passenger who would soon become infamous as the Mask Rule martyr in a story that was equal parts absurd and unforgettable. Passengers had barely finished stowing their carry-ons when the incident began to unfold, creating turbulence far beyond what the pilots could have anticipated. The chaos started innocuously, as most mid-air dramas do, with a simple request. The captain, visibly fatigued from his role as the enforcer of airborne law, signaled to the crew about Erica, who was seated near the middle of the plane. Her supposed offense? Wearing her mask in that defiant way, securely covering her mouth but conspicuously absent from her nose. In an era where mask mandates were as non-negotiable as seat belts, this minor act of rebellion took on disproportionate significance. What followed could rival any daytime courtroom drama. Erica, now the center of attention, vehemently denied the accusations, her voice rising in indignation as if she were auditioning for an Emmy-winning performance. "It wasn't me," she declared, her delivery infused with desperation and a curious theatricality. She resembled not the reggae artist Shaggy, but rather the bumbling cartoon character Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, as if she were expecting a meddling kid to jump out and clear her name. What could have ended with a brief apology and a quiet exit quickly escalated into a dramatic scene. Erica clung to her seat as though she were chained to it, holding the armrests with the determination of a protester unwilling to give up her cause. Her reasoning? A conspiracy, of course. She insisted that the real culprit was an identical stranger, or perhaps a plot by the flight crew themselves. While this argument could have been intriguing if it weren't so ridiculous, the captain and crew were unimpressed. Spoiler alert, there was no doppelganger, and the conspiracy theory held no weight beyond its absurdity. What might have been a mere inconvenience quickly evolved into a full-blown spectacle. Passengers craned their necks, flight attendants exchanged weary glances, and the captain likely began contemplating an early retirement. Thus began the first act of Erica's airborne odyssey, an incident destined to become a piece of in-flight folklore. The situation escalated rapidly, turning what was meant to be a routine flight delay into an unforgettable scene. Flight attendants approached Erica with a mix of professionalism and rising frustration, but their polite requests for her to disembark were met with resolute defiance. "I'm not leaving. This is an injustice," Erica declared, her voice resonating through the cabin like the opening act of a courtroom drama. Her emotional range swung wildly between Shakespearean tragedy and daytime soap opera melodrama. With every impassioned proclamation, she clutched her designer handbag as though it contained classified information or the last remnants of her dignity. Around her, passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some were annoyed by the delay, while others seemed entertained by the unfolding drama. Smartphones appeared like prairie dogs in a field, capturing every over-the-top gesture and tear-streaked outburst as though they were witnessing a masterclass in public theatrics. As the situation dragged on, reinforcements arrived in the form of airport police officers, who entered the scene with the calm professionalism of seasoned experts. However, even their presence seemed to further embolden Erica. She dug in her metaphorical heels, turning the aisle into her personal stage. Negotiations began, not unlike those reserved for a hostage situation. But there was no hijacked aircraft or sinister plot, just one woman determined to halt a flight for an audience. What could have been a quick resolution evolved into an extended standoff, with Erica's escalating emotions matched only by the collective groans of passengers eager to take off. The officers, well accustomed to such situations, maintained their composure while the captain stood by, arms crossed, likely regretting his decision to point her out. The cabin transformed from an ordinary space for air travel to an impromptu theater, where the protagonist, clad in righteous indignation, refused to exit stage left. Erica, however, was unaware that the curtain would fall not on her terms, but those of the law. When diplomacy failed, the officers moved to the inevitable, escorting Erica off the plane. And so began Act 3, the arrest, a spectacle that blended comedy, drama, and absurdity in equal measure. Erica, realizing the situation had spiraled beyond her control, didn't go quietly. Instead, she launched into a resistance effort that could rival the most dramatic toddler tantrum. She flailed her arms, dramatically proclaiming injury. "My finger! My elbow! My dignity!" she cried, clutching various parts of her body in exaggerated agony, as though auditioning for a soap opera. Her over-the-top performance left even the seasoned officers exchanging subtle glances of disbelief. Meanwhile, the cabin turned into an impromptu comedy club. Passengers, who had previously groaned about delays, now leaned in eagerly to watch the unfolding spectacle. Phones were raised to capture every melodramatic twist. One passenger quipped, "Is this part of the in-flight entertainment?" while another murmured, "Better than the last rom-com I watched." Erica's protests grew louder, and the situation became a full-blown spectacle. Even the beverage cart operator in the back paused mid-service to watch, while the crying baby in 17B seemed momentarily pacified by the unfolding drama. The officers, displaying saintly patience, continued their task with calm precision. Despite their reassurances, Erica's protests only intensified. "I'm being attacked," she howled, her voice echoing as though she were the protagonist of a Shakespearean tragedy. Passengers exchanged bemused glances, half expecting a dramatic monologue about betrayal. Instead, Erica lamented her perceived public humiliation, a performance so captivating that the entire cabin seemed caught in the drama. By the time the officers managed to guide her out of the aisle, the cabin buzzed with chuckles and knowing nods. It wasn't every day that one's travel plans came with front-row seats to an unscripted reality show. In the end, Erica's refusal to comply only prolonged the inevitable, turning what should have been a quick departure into an unforgettable event for every passenger on Flight 202. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Erica's demeanor shifted dramatically. Gone was the defiant passenger who had stood her ground with revolutionary zeal. In her place was a contrite figure, drenched in melodrama and self-pity. Tears flowed freely as she alternated between apologizing, pleading, and trying to regain control of the situation through sheer emotional volume. "I'll leave now. I swear," she wailed, her voice rising to a pitch that could rival the plane's emergency alarm. "It's Valentine's Day, and I'm alone." This heartfelt cry for sympathy might have tugged at heartstrings if it weren't immediately undercut by her subsequent barrage of grievances. "Call my lawyer. My iPad's broken. My bracelet is missing." Her disjointed laments transformed the scene into something resembling an impromptu audition for a daytime soap opera. Each new claim of injustice added a fresh layer to the spectacle, turning her plight into a paradoxical blend of comedy and tragedy. It was as though Erica believed that listing every misfortune, real or imagined, would somehow reverse the tide of her predicament. The crowd, initially captivated by her theatrics, began exchanging amused glances. Even the officers, trained to handle emotionally charged encounters, seemed momentarily taken aback by the sheer intensity of her performance. One officer, maintaining a professional but bemused expression, quietly murmured instructions while Erica swung between tearful apologies and indignation. For those watching, her display was less about genuine remorse and more akin to performance art. Her dramatic delivery and abrupt tonal shifts, tears turning to righteous anger and back again, might have earned her critical acclaim in a theater, but in the real-world setting of an airport, it only underscored her refusal to accept responsibility. Had Erica maintained consistency in her pleas, perhaps focusing solely on her apology or her loneliness on Valentine's Day, she might have swayed a few hearts. Instead, the juxtaposition of personal grievances, legal threats, and performative sorrow left even the most empathetic bystanders questioning her sincerity. It was a scene destined for viral infamy, a cautionary tale of how not to win over an audience, particularly one equipped with smartphones. In the end, Erica's emotional outburst became the defining moment of the incident, ensuring her place in the annals of air travel lore. As one passenger whispered to another, "It's like she's auditioning for a role. Just not the one she wants." The officers displayed a level of composure that could rival seasoned diplomats. As Erica spiraled into a cacophony of excuses, apologies, and dramatic proclamations, they remained stoic, their expressions reflecting an unspoken mantra: "This too shall pass." Despite her melodramatic performance, the officers adhered strictly to protocol, ensuring that her rights were acknowledged while calmly reiterating her charges. Their professionalism stood in sharp contrast to Erica's theatrics. While she was accusing, pleading, and protesting in a dizzying loop, the officers stayed focused, emphasizing the evidence against her. "The captain has explicitly identified you as the individual who violated the rules," one officer stated, his tone devoid of irritation or mockery. The simplicity of their communication underscored their unwillingness to engage in the emotional turbulence she created. The statement, "You have to go to jail," was delivered with the casual neutrality of a meteorologist predicting rain. It wasn't a threat or an ultimatum, it was a statement of fact. The officer's tone, calm yet firm, conveyed that the legal process was a predetermined path, not a debate. This detached professionalism added an almost surreal quality to the moment, as if the officers were immune to the spectacle unfolding around them. Erica's response, however, flipped the tone entirely. "But it's Valentine's Day," she exclaimed, her voice tinged with desperation and disbelief, as though February 14th exempted her from accountability. In her mind, romance and handcuffs were mutually exclusive concepts, and surely Cupid would back her up on this. The unintentional humor of the situation lay in its absurdity. Erica's plea, "But it's Valentine's Day," was not just irrelevant but spectacularly misplaced. The officer's silence in response was as loud as a drum roll, as if they, too, were marveling at the sheer creativity of her reasoning. Unfortunately for Erica, law enforcement operates on legal codes, not holiday calendars. And as the narrative reminds us with a biting touch of wit, Cupid doesn't deliver bail money or operate within the confines of holding cells. Beneath the humor and drama, the interaction hinted at a deeper theme: the clash between personal emotions and societal rules. Erica's outburst, while comedic, was also deeply human. She wasn't just resisting arrest, she was resisting the reality that her actions had consequences. Her invocation of Valentine's Day was more than a distraction. It was a desperate attempt to reframe the situation, to make the officers see her not as an offender but as a person deserving of sympathy. The officers, however, were tasked with maintaining the boundaries of the law. Their measured responses reflected an understanding that emotions, while valid, could not override established rules. This balance of empathy and enforcement highlighted the delicate role officers play in such scenarios. Ultimately, the interaction served as a microcosm of a larger truth: accountability is inescapable. Erica's protests, dramatic as they were, could not alter the fact that she had been identified, warned, and still chose not to comply. The officer's calm demeanor and adherence to procedure underscored the inevitability of consequences when one chooses to defy authority, regardless of personal circumstances or the date on the calendar. The scene, therefore, wasn't just an amusing anecdote. It was a reminder of the balance between individual emotions and collective rules, a balance that ensures order in even the most chaotic situations. As the dramatic saga reached its inevitable conclusion, Erica found herself formally charged with trespassing and resisting arrest, two offenses that seemed mundane compared to the cinematic flair she brought to the situation. The officers, by now seasoned in handling her theatrics, explained her next steps with calm professionalism. Erica, however, responded with the fervor of someone being sentenced to life in exile. $500. "This will ruin my life," she wailed, her voice echoing through the airport terminal with such intensity that even the duty-free shop employees momentarily paused. The announcement of her bond seemed to unleash a torrent of existential despair. Passengers seated nearby exchanged amused glances, some whispering, "Does she think we're about to pass the hat around?" Others speculated whether Erica had confused her predicament with a crowdfunding opportunity, given her tone of exaggerated tragedy. Her reaction teetered between disbelief and indignation, as though the financial burden of her bond represented a grand betrayal of justice. "What am I supposed to do?" she continued, arms flailing for emphasis. "I don't have this kind of money lying around." The passengers, most of whom had endured overpriced snacks and baggage fees, found her lament less than convincing. Despite Erica's insistence that the situation was beyond her control, the officers calmly outlined the legal process she would face: the bond payment, a court date, and the potential consequences of her actions. For a fleeting moment, it seemed as though Erica understood the gravity of her predicament, but then she pivoted to a new grievance. "What about my iPad? And my bracelet? This is a violation of my rights." By the time the formalities were completed, it was clear to all involved that Erica's arrest was less about legal charges and more about a master class in public melodrama. As she was escorted away, passengers couldn't help but feel they had witnessed something extraordinary, a moment where law enforcement collided with soap opera, all for the modest price of a plane ticket. As the situation escalated, Erica's emotional and physical reactions grew increasingly erratic, revealing the depths of her panic and desperation. She began alternating between tearful apologies and fervent accusations, as if caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. One moment, she was pleading with the officers to let her go; the next, she was blaming them for the destruction of her personal belongings, her dignity, and even her very sense of self. With dramatic flair, Erica claimed that her iPad, a device she seemingly valued more than her own freedom, had been broken during the chaotic scene. "My iPad was a casualty of justice," she wailed, as though her tablet was some sort of innocent victim in a larger conspiracy. The phrasing was absurd, yet Erica's expression of hurt was real, her voice quivering as if the iPad's shattered screen had somehow shattered her soul. Her complaints didn't stop there. In a move that could only be described as theatrical, Erica began accusing the officers of stealing her prized gold bracelet, insisting it had mysteriously vanished during the altercation. She looked around frantically, as if expecting the officers to miraculously pull the missing jewelry from thin air. Her eyes darted around the scene, searching for a clue or any sign of her missing possession, her voice rising in a crescendo of disbelief and frustration. Meanwhile, the officers remained steadfast, unwavering in their professionalism. Their expressions were unreadable, their demeanor as neutral as a DMV clerk on the busiest Monday morning. They had clearly seen this type of emotional outburst before, perhaps not on an airplane, but certainly in other tense situations, and they handled it with the same nonchalance one might expect from someone tasked with enforcing rules, not emotions. Their sympathy, if any, was as scarce as a parking spot at 8 a.m. on a workday. Erica's emotional theatrics barely seemed to register, as they continued their work with mechanical efficiency. In the face of Erica's dramatic pleas and accusations, the officers' responses were as steady and predictable as the ticking of a clock. While Erica spiraled into a frenzy of emotional turmoil, the officers remained calm, almost emotionless. Their role was clear: to maintain order, not to cater to the theatrics of an individual who had refused to comply. The contrast between Erica's spiraling chaos and the officers' stoic detachment could not have been more striking. It was a battle of wills, with Erica using every ounce of her energy to shift the narrative in her favor, while the officers remained unmoved, focused on carrying out their duty without being swayed by the emotional storm unfolding before them. As Erica's drama unfolded, the tension in the cabin was palpable. The once serene atmosphere turned into a frenzy, with passengers taking out their phones to capture the entire spectacle. They whispered to each other, some making light-hearted comments while others speculated on what would happen next, as if they were watching the final moments of a reality TV show. The scene was a perfect blend of voyeurism and intrigue, with everyone becoming part of the drama, whether they wanted to or not. Erica, visibly distressed, was acutely aware of the growing audience. The sound of camera shutters and video recorders was relentless as more passengers joined in the impromptu recording session. Every twist and turn of her emotional meltdown was immortalized in pixels and uploaded to the internet for the world to see. Erica, once the center of attention for all the wrong reasons, pleaded with the crowd in desperation, "Don't post this. Her words, a final attempt to retain some semblance of control, had the opposite effect. Instead of stopping the spread of her humiliation, they only fueled the fire, ensuring that her chaotic exit would be shared across social media platforms within minutes. The irony was thick. Her plea to be left out of the public eye only made her a viral sensation, cementing her role as the unwilling star of the day's most talked-about spectacle. To the passengers, this wasn't just a situation that involved an unruly flyer. It had transformed into an unmissable moment, a piece of airport theater that demanded to be witnessed and shared. They weren't merely observing an incident. They were part of it, amplifying Erica's breakdown in a way that would haunt her long after the plane touched down. In an age where everyone's life can become a live-streamed event at the tap of a button, Erica's efforts to stop the recording were futile. With each passing second, the spectacle grew larger, and Erica's nightmare only intensified as the real-time commentary continued to unfold around her. After the chaos unfolded and the final curtain fell, Erica was escorted off the plane, her emotional roller coaster winding down as she was transported toward her fate. Her once spirited protests fell silent, replaced by a resignation that perhaps even she hadn't expected. With each step, the weight of her actions began to settle in. The audience, now left with only the aftermath, was left to reflect on the spectacle they had witnessed. For Erica, it was likely a moment she wished could be erased, a memory that would likely haunt her for years to come. But for the rest of the world, it was simply another chapter in the ongoing saga of passengers gone rogue, a reminder of the tension between individual emotion and the strict boundaries of the law. But one thing was certain: no one would forget the day Erica turned a routine flight into a headline-worthy debacle. In today's world, safety and health regulations on flights have become more important than ever. Adhering to rules such as wearing a mask is not only a requirement of airlines, but also a duty of passengers to protect public health. This helps reduce the risk of spreading infectious diseases and maintains order and safety in public spaces. As seen in Erica's story, failing to follow a simple rule like wearing a mask led to a chain of unwanted events, causing the flight to be delayed and disrupting the lives of many passengers. Therefore, a small action like wearing a mask could help you avoid much bigger troubles later. Maintaining composure and politeness is key to preventing tense situations from escalating. Erica could have resolved the misunderstanding simply by complying with the airline staff's request. However, instead of cooperating, she reacted strongly, even refusing to leave the plane, which only made the situation more complicated. When we try to confront and get angry, the end result is often not as expected. Cooperation and calmness are the ways to resolve things quickly and smoothly. Erica not only violated the mask rule but also exhibited an unreasonable attitude, which made the situation more confusing and drew unnecessary attention. While dramatic performances might attract attention, they rarely lead to positive outcomes. In fact, any strong resistance to reasonable requests from flight attendants only puts the violator in a difficult position, while other passengers are unlikely to enjoy being part of an unwanted drama. Therefore, rather than playing the actor in an undesired scene on a flight, Erica, and all of us, should know when to reserve such performances for the right place and time, such as on a stage, where theatrics will be appreciated. Ultimately, Erica's act of defiance didn't earn her an award or sympathy. It earned her a one-way ticket to jail. By choosing not to comply with the captain and law enforcement officers, Erica not only disrupted order on the flight, but also brought serious consequences upon herself. Sometimes, when we choose to argue with those in authority, we can't always control the outcome. Instead of getting what we want, we might face consequences we never imagined. Erica's flight, which could have ended at an airport, had to land in a completely different place: jail. This serves as a clear example of how impulsive and thoughtless actions can completely alter the course of our lives. Don't let hasty decisions in the air become the reason you face legal issues later. In the end, Erica's journey may have concluded with a costly lesson on the importance of compliance and discipline. Erica's story is a reminder that following rules and behaving appropriately in tense situations is extremely important. In any circumstance, remaining calm, cooperating, and respecting reasonable requests from airline staff not only helps us avoid unnecessary trouble but also protects our own rights. Impulsive decisions and hasty actions can lead to serious consequences, from disrupting flights to facing legal problems. Therefore, every action we take has a significant impact on the final outcome, and sometimes a humble and cooperative attitude is the key to ensuring everything goes smoothly.